Imagine something small enough to float on a particle of dust that holds the keys to understanding cancer, virology, and genetics. Luckily for us, such a thing exists in the form of trillions upon trillions of human lab-grown cells called HeLa. Let's take a step back for a second. Scientists grow human cells in the lab to study how they function, understand how diseases develop, and test new treatments without endangering patients. To make sure that they can repeat these experiments over and over and compare the results with other scientists, they need huge populations of identical cells that can duplicate themselves faithfully for years. But until 1951, all human cell lines that researchers tried to grow had died after a few days. Then a Johns Hopkins scientist named George Guy received a sample of a strange-looking tumor. Dark purple, shiny, jelly-like. This sample was special. Some of its cells just kept dividing and dividing and dividing. When individual cells died, generations of copies took their place and thrived. The result was an endless source of identical cells that's still around today, the very first immortal human cell line. Guy labeled it HeLa after the patient with the unusual tumor, Henrietta Lacks. Born on a tobacco farm in Virginia, she lived in Baltimore with her husband and 5 children. She died of aggressive cervical cancer a few months after her tumor's cells were harvested, and she never knew about them. So what's so special about the cells from Henrietta Lacks that lets them survive when other cell lines die? The short answer is, we don't entirely know. Normal human cells have built-in control mechanisms. They can divide about 50 times before they self-destruct in a process called apoptosis. This prevents the propagation of genetic errors that creep in after repeated rounds of division. But cancer cells ignore these signals, dividing indefinitely and crowding out normal cells. Still, most cell lines eventually die off, especially outside the human body. Not HeLa, though, and that's the part we can't yet explain. Regardless, when Dr. Guy realized he had the first immortal line of human cells, he sent samples to labs all over the world. Soon the world's first cell production facility was churning out 6 trillion HeLa cells a week. And scientists put them to work, in an ethically problematic way, building careers and fortunes off of Henrietta's cells without her or her family's consent, or even knowledge until decades later. The polio epidemic was at its peak in the early 50s. HeLa cells, which easily took up and replicated the virus, allowed Jonas Salk to test his vaccine. They've been used to study diseases including measles, mumps, HIV, and Ebola. We know that human cells have 46 chromosomes because a scientist working with HeLa discovered a chemical that makes chromosomes visible. HeLa cells themselves actually have around 80 highly mutated chromosomes. HeLa cells were the first to be cloned. They've traveled to outer space. Telomerase, an enzyme that helps cancer cells evade destruction by repairing their DNA, was discovered first in HeLa cells. In an interesting turn of fate, thanks to HeLa, we know that cervical cancer can be caused by a virus called H.P.V, and now there's a vaccine. HeLa-fueled discoveries have filled thousands of scientific papers, and that number is probably even higher than anyone knows. HeLa cells are so resilient that they can travel on almost any surface. A lab worker's hand, a piece of dust, invading cultures of other cells and taking over like weeds. Countless cures, patents, and discoveries, all made thanks to Henrietta Lacks.
W.T.F. with the family Tabors. to all of our Tabor Squad members. If you are new here, I do hope that you will consider subscribing to this channel. Or if you want to take it up a notch and become a part of the Tabor Squad, all you have to do is hit that join button and decide whatever level is suitable for you and become a member. It's just that simple. So the H.A.P.I family is taking this time to pay homage to some amazing African Americans who have made major contributions to society. I do hope that you will join us today and tomorrow to help us celebrate in the spirit of Juneteenth. Our title for the collaboration is Celebrating Juneteenth and Beyond. The spotlight is on you. And the person that I have the privilege of spotlighting is Henrietta Lex. She was a 31-year-old African-American mom of 5. She was experiencing some vaginal bleeding and decided to visit the now legendary Johns Hopkins Hospital. Upon examination, the renowned gynecologist, Dr. Howard Jones, did discover a large malignant tumor on her cervix. Keep in mind at this time, Johns Hopkins was one of only a few hospitals that would treat poor African Americans. She began taking radiation treatments, which at this time was the best medical treatment available for cervical cancer. A sample of her cancer cells were retrieved on a biopsy and were sent to Dr. George Gay's tissue lab. For years, Dr. Gay had been collecting samples from all patients that were diagnosed with cervical cancer, regardless of the race, age, or socioeconomic status. Each sample that he collected from other patients, he discovered they would soon die. Henrietta's tissue cells were unique, and to this day, they can't figure out why her cells would double every 20 to 24 hours when other cells were dying. Today, these cells are nicknamed HeLa, the HeLa cells, from the first 2 letters of her first name and the first 2 letters of her last name. These cells have been used to test toxins, drugs, hormones, and viruses on the growth of cancer cells without experimenting on human beings. Miss Lex passed away on October 4th, 1951 at the age of 31. Her cells continue to impact the world. You would think that because her cells do continue to impact the world, that her family has generated wealth for years to come, but that is not the case. In fact, the family never knew that extra cells were taken. It was 1970 when researchers contacted family members only because they wanted to get more samples to see were their cells the same as Henrietta's. And that set the HeLa cell case in motion. I'm going to play a quick video now for you to just give you an update on what is going on with this case, because the pharmaceutical companies have made billions off of these cells and the family has not been compensated at all. In fact, the pharmaceutical companies are saying that because those cells were taken so many years ago, that those cells are no longer in use. But keep in mind that those cells belong to Henrietta Lex, and they doubled. Remember, the family is now saying that each time those cells were generated, that they should be compensated for each and every single time. So the family finally got their day in court, and the clip that I'm about to show you now will just, give you some backstory on what has happened and how the family feels, and that Henrietta's last child is yet living. He's an elderly man, but, just to give you an insight on what is going on with this case, it's an injustice, really, towards the family. So I hope that I have shed some light on Henrietta Lex. If you did not know her, I hope that you will do more study on her and get to know who she is. And if you are familiar with her, then you should know how important and what an impact she has made to science. So I hope that you all will follow the H.A.P.I collaboration for the next 2 days and just learn about some people that are known but not known, and get to know some of these amazing content creators as we give our presentations and share with you and help celebrate Juneteenth.
And great members of our legal team. We have the honor of representing the estate of Henrietta Lacks. Present here with us is Henrietta Lacks' only remaining child, Mr. Lawrence Lacks, who at 84 years young got a chance to do something that he never thought he would be able to do, and that's to go into a courtroom and have his mother dignity and respect and humanity championed as a woman worthy of respect. Also present with us is his son Ron Lacks, his nephew Deborah's son Alfred Carter, his niece Kim, who is Sonny's daughter. Today, we told the court that the HeLa cells are not derived from Henrietta Lacks, but they are Henrietta Lacks. And you cannot dissociate the HeLa cells from Henrietta Lacks because she was real. She was a human being. And as Attorney Seeger so artfully articulated, that the theory of unjust enrichment entitles the family to their day in court, that Henrietta lives as long as her cells live. And each time that there is a regeneration and selling for profit and commercialization of these cells, the statute of limitations starts all over again. So this is an unprecedented case, and we pray that the court, as other courts have done with dealing with unprecedented circumstances, like the Jewish survivors of the Holocaust demanding unjust enrichment when the banks had stole from them and committed a wrongdoing, that this wrongdoing, this racism, and this discrimination will not go unaccounted ever again, that finally Henrietta Lacks will get the respect she deserves.